Hey everybody, it must be Friday. Either that or my calendar's broken. It's a little bit past 3 here in Estonia. I'm back in Estonia, as you can tell from the background. That's not a green screen. That's the actual meme wall. Back in the office, back on my chair. And yeah, trying to get some shit done, hopefully. Here we are. So it's Friday. That means you should have some questions, and hopefully I have some answers. And hopefully my answers match your questions, because if I answer shit that you're not asking, it's going to be a weird session. I'm going to try to keep this one to 30, 40 minutes. But if you guys keep asking good questions, I'm going to keep trying to give good answers. So let's get rolling. I see London is first today. Good job, London. That kind of looks like a old school CoinMetro logo and a Parsec logo combined. I like it. Maybe that's not what it's supposed to be. Maybe it's like some one of your kids' drawings and I just butchered it and the kid's gonna go home crying now. I don't know, but that's what it looks like. And if that's what it is, amazing. So hi to you as well. It's very rare here that I come in here and there's not already a wall of questions. So that means I actually have to try and entertain you guys without answering questions. I don't even know how to do that anymore. You guys see Slimer and Back to the Future in the background? That's pretty cool, right? All right, what up? AASSB, how are you? Drinking tea. It's cold tea. Normally, I either drink the tea when it's way too hot and I burn the shit out of my mouth, or I then get scared to drink the tea and then end up drinking it when it's cold. I'm a terrible tea drinker is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, any news on DNA staking? No. Actually, I never got the chance to talk to David, CEO of Encryptgen, when I was down in Mexico. That can be bad news for some, but that's good news in other ways. I was busy. We inaugurated our office down there. We had a great event, brought people in from Mexico, from the US, from Europe, got everybody down there, got the office officially open. People are now working in the office. It's a great vibe. It's great to now have 2 official offices where people can actually get shit done around the world. I think that's amazing. Fortunately, didn't have a chance to talk to David. We do have a lot of things happening in the staking realm. I'm going to wait a bit because I'm sure somebody else is going to ask the question. So this is specifically about DNA staking. So I'll stick with, no, I haven't talked to David yet, though we do have a lot of staking news. And I'll wait for someone to ask the question because I'm sure somebody's going to ask it. It's a CM logo and a Chainlink logo. Chainlink. That's still pretty good. I like Chainlink. I'm a Link fan. I'm not in the Link army. I have flat feet, so they wouldn't let me in. But I do like Chainlink. As per their latest investor report, igneum only has 1 month runway left. What would happen to CM bond payments if igneum were to close after that? Igneum has been looking for some funding. I'm fairly confident they're gonna be able to extend that month. If you guys remember, if you were here back in 2019, we were fundraising month on month, and somehow we're still here. So look, when you have conviction, you have a good product, and you have a good team, you'll make it work. So I have all the respect in the world for people that go through that. It's not the easiest thing, that's for sure. Anybody who's never had to do it, it's probably a good thing to experience at one time in your life. It can be pretty stressful, but at the end of the day, I think it builds a lot of character, and I have all the respect for Ramo, and I think he's going to be able to get it done. If scenario, so bond payments would probably need to be consolidated in some way, or we'd have to do early redemption, something like that. Simply because we don't have the permission required to actually pay out the bond payments on our platform. And so we'd have to figure out how we do that, but we would solve it. I guess is the point, we would solve it. I do think though, igneum is going to continue. In fact, they've been floating around on 1 month, I think, since August. So they've been able to get through August and September. They've cut costs. They've been able to fine tune a bit of their revenue. Revenue is a bit higher than it used to be. And cost is now, I think, 4 or 5 times less. And so I'm confident they're going to be able to keep going. Thoughts on U.S. potentially introducing legislation banning crypto mining? Hey, cryptojunkie. Well, this is one of those things. Every once in a while, you're going to get nonsense messages from in the media about legislators or regulators trying to stop a moving train. They're not going to ban crypto mining. When election years happen, specifically in the U.S., you're going to get a lot of bullshit in the media, a lot. And you're going to get a lot of political maneuvering, trying to posture and trying to say things that they believe their base is going to listen to. So green and green energy and all these things have been a thing now for maybe the last 3, 4, 5 political cycles, maybe more. And, you know, whether it's global warming, whether, you know, I made a joke about that a couple weeks ago and then got like lambasted on Telegram. So I think I should do a whole separate like podcast or something every week where I can just make fun of shit. It'd be really fun for me and maybe for other people. Maybe I only get one listener. I don't know, but it'd be fun for me because sometimes I feel like I can't say what I want to say here. So I'm not going to make the joke again. I think it was a pretty good joke. A couple people didn't like it. Point is that whether it be global warming or whether it be ESG or whatever, green is a thing in an election year. When it's not an election year, nobody gives a shit, to be honest. Like politicians will drive their Humvees to work, and then when they get to work, they'll get on a treadmill powered by diesel and do a few laps, and then, you know, nobody fucking cares. But when the election year rolls around, green becomes a thing. So with green being a thing, and obviously most legislators don't know what crypto mining is or don't really know what the impact is. You know, there are definitely assets that get mined that might be proof of work or otherwise that spend a lot of energy that don't really give a lot of benefit. But most of this ends up getting thrown towards Bitcoin. And that argument is absolute nonsense. It's a nonsense argument from the get-go. And the reason being is that, you know, what is Bitcoin is the first question that they need to ask themselves, right? And what is Bitcoin? What does it do? What can it do that is currently done in maybe an even less green manner currently? And if you think about Bitcoin as either a source of a store of value, for example, if you think about it as a payment mechanism, think about other payment mechanisms. Everybody likes to talk about Visa and MasterCard. Let's get rid of the transactions per second argument for a second. And let's assume that Bitcoin can compete with any of these other services. And, you know, in some ways it can through layer 2s, et cetera. But let's assume it just can't, right? Then there's the argument that, well, you know, it's a lot of electricity. Well, how much electricity does Visa and MasterCard burn when they have a billion terminals around the world, 500 office buildings, 200,000 employees, people commuting in and out of work every day, just to make sure that when I go and, you know, when you go and buy your coffee at 4 a.m. so you can stay up and cram for an exam, that the payment goes through. How much energy are they expending? It's a nonsense argument, but it's going to be an argument that's going to be pushed hard. And it's going to continue to be pushed hard through this election year. I guarantee you, though, watch what happens after November. You won't hear so much about this until 2024. Almost guarantee you. Obviously, there'll be microchasms like this around the world. Europe also has a bit of a hard-on for Bitcoin mining. And that's just because, well, it seems like an easy target. The problem is when you understand what you're arguing, it becomes a pretty difficult target because the argument doesn't make any sense. But that takes time to get there. We're not there yet. Sound is good. Sorry about the recant trolling. No need to. You know, a little bit of trolling every once in a while is not a bad thing. I like to troll every now and again. You know where I like to troll? I like to go to events and troll the booths. Everybody like, you know, the product booths. That's one of my hobbies. So, you know, a little trolling isn't so bad. So no worries. Hi, Kevin. What would you use 10 million euros for if they were available for you to use as you please? I don't know if that's a personal question or a business question. It seems like it's a personal one because you didn't mention CoinMetro. So not much. You know, I don't want to sound like some type of elitist or something, but 10 million doesn't go as far as it used to. That's like 1 month's electric bill, you know? You know, I guess it's a hard question to answer because I don't know exactly how you're asking it. Like what, because the answer could be in many ways very different. You know, if you ask me like, what would I enjoy doing versus what I think what I would actually do versus maybe what I would like to do, like things that I may not be able to do personally, but that I'd like to be able to do. So it's a hard question, but you know, I think in the end, being at the point in life where I am, it's about securing my family's future. So that would be my first goal. But you know, you need to have a little fun in the process as well. So I do something fun. Not really sure what that would be. Definitely wouldn't be more than, you know, maybe 5% of that money that I'd have some fun with. I'm definitely not a Lambo guy. I'm not going to go buy an expensive car. You know, I'm not going to be that bald guy that drives through like Miami Beach really slow, thinking that he looks more attractive because he's driving an expensive car. I don't do that. And hopefully never do that. There's been some things that I said I'd never do when I was a kid that I've done now, which make me kind of feel like a loser. Like you know, there's always this saying like my I don't know, 6th grade self will probably beat the shit out of my adult self for several reasons. You know, everybody kind of crosses that bridge at some point. It's weird though when it happens, but definitely I don't think I'd ever be one of those guys. Or like I wouldn't buy like some fake hair. I wouldn't do that. I don't know. I don't know what I do. Maybe just take like a around the world trip and disconnect for like 6 months. That sounds amazing. It sounds very difficult, to be honest. It's hard for me to disconnect for more than a few days. Actually, it's hard to do it for a day. But like 5 days is pretty much the most I can even partially disconnect before I kind of go nuts. But I think it'd be a good test and might actually be fun. Or at least I'd learn something about myself. Please tell us a lot of staking news. See, you knew somebody would ask because I asked someone to ask, and Anonymous decided to ask. Fucking amazing. So we all know, because we're all XCM bag holders, and we're all buying more every day because obviously that's what we do as XCM bag holders, is buy XCM. We all understand that the book right now is not the prettiest, right? It's not in the best shape it's ever been, that's for sure. And I guess we all know, if you've all been listening to these shows or listening to me or in Telegram, that one of the priorities, if not the priority in the business right now, is to write that book. And it's not a 1 + 1 = 2 type of, formula question. It's much more complex than that. It's about trying to figure out psychology. It's about trying to make a decision that upsets the fewest amount of people. Because no matter what we do as a business, and I guess you guys have probably figured this out, and if you haven't, here's a pro tip. No matter what you do in life, you're always going to piss off some people. So the whole question is, who do you want to piss off today, right? You want to piss off the bag holder? You want to piss off the new guy? You want to piss off, the old investor? You want to piss off the whales? You want to piss off the minnows? Who do you want to piss off today, right? In fact, I think I should have remember I asked somebody to make me I forget what the board was about. It's supposed to be some slider. I can't remember. Nobody made it, man. I still don't have it on my wall. I don't remember what it was supposed to be, but I think another thing I need is basically I should have a button I can push of who I want to piss off today, because that'll help me make some decisions sometimes. I'm going to piss off the whales today. Let's see what I do. You're always going to upset somebody. That's just the way decision making works, and that's why making decisions is sometimes pretty difficult, because somebody's going to get upset. But we are, working on many different solutions, and I think we've already done some things that I think have had an effect. Maybe you don't see that effect, but you don't necessarily know what would have happened had we not made those changes. Things like being able to use XCM as collateral. Things like being able to, I guess in general, adding more utility to XCM, which I think is a major piece of the puzzle. But one of the big things that we haven't done yet is been able to extend Mars, and that's a big focus right now. So we have a target between now and, let's say, end of October to add 5. That's 5 new staking programs onto the platform, all of which will touch Mars. We're also in discussions on kind of what we're going to do to even incentivize more. Normally what we do is, we make a bit of money on staking. Obviously, we're a business. We need to do that. We're also talking about maybe ways to incentivize a bit more by pushing more of that staking revenue to Mars participants. So lots of stuff talks internally. 5 new staking programs by the end of October. That's the goal. That's what we're focused on. What licenses are you still chasing for CoinMetro? Well, I think we're always going to be chasing some form of licensing. Right now, our active either submissions or conversations, obviously we have the FIU here in Estonia, which is a license we already had, but one that got completely revamped. And for the most part, they did a good job at revamping that license in terms of oversight, et cetera. And so we're still in that process, because it is a longer process than it was before, which is a good thing. So we're still working on that. We also have the UK. So UK has their AML registration. It's not a license, but they don't have a license. They have a registration, but we're working on that as well. Also, Dubai with VARA, which is the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, their current they don't call it a sandbox. I forget their vernacular, but essentially an MVP license, which will eventually, within the next 6 to 12 months, become an actual license. So we're also working on that. And then in the background, a little bit on the back burner is US licensing, but that's probably the next frontier once we get through these current licensing pushes. And then, we have in the background of that as well, MiCA. Now, the Estonian license, I believe, is going to be MiCA compliant, considering the changes that they've made, which would mean it'd be passportable, which means we already took a giant leap forward. Many companies decided to leave Estonia when that new regulation hit. We decided to stay because we're all about more comprehensive regulation that's smart and helps us actually push the business forward. And so we stayed. And so I do think that was the right move, because at the end of the day, being MiCA compliant, being able to passport a license across Europe is going to be a big thing, rather than having to go, as you've seen some of our competitors do, and make announcements about all these different AML registrations that they've done in different countries. It's not really needed. Once MiCA comes out, all those registrations are meaningless. And so we took a different path, and I think it's the smarter one. Are you going to attend any conferences as a speaker this year? Yeah, actually a ton. Starting in September. Maybe we should, well, we're working on launching a new version of the Kevin Murcko website with a slightly less egregious photo. And so there, I think we'll probably carve out a piece so you guys can see upcoming events, because there's old events listed there, but not necessarily upcoming events. Starting from roughly the 20th or so of September, I'm at events in several different places, in Gibraltar, in Portugal, in Amsterdam, in Las Vegas, in Dubai. Many of them I will be speaking at. So, for example, also in Copenhagen. So in Copenhagen, Nordic FinTech Week or something like that. Something along those lines. I'll be speaking there. Also be speaking in Amsterdam at BTC Amsterdam, which is the same people who run BTC, the Bitcoin 2022, 2023, 2021, et cetera, in Miami. Also, we'll be speaking in Dubai at GTEX, which is a massive security, cybersecurity event. Also, there's some side events. One of those is Blockchain Week, I think, something like that. Yes, a lot of events actually coming up. So we'll disseminate some information. You'll see that on our social media as I get closer to those dates about where I'll be. I just made a bug report since I can't sell my XCM. Looking forward to the bug reward. I'm assuming that's a joke. Yeah, not a bug. Not necessarily by design either, but not enough people on the buy side. So you basically go into a queue with your limit order, and that'll eventually get filled once everybody else is filled. Again, top priority for us. A lot of things happening. I do think, and I think the business thinks in general, that adding those additional staking programs to Mars will definitely make XCM a more interesting option for people, which will definitely help push through that book. So again, all eyes are there. I know things get frustrating because people have an expectation that things can happen like this, or that because we're very transparent. Again, sometimes this transparency bites us in the ass, but we're very transparent with you guys. I'm very transparent with you guys. And again, sometimes I get yelled at for that. But the thing is that I share with you a lot of the ideas, if not most of the ideas, if not in some cases all the ideas we have internally. And sometimes those ideas don't work out. That's life, right? I mean, if every idea you had worked out, well, shit, there'd be no problems in the world. And as everybody knows, the world has a lot of problems. That's because most ideas don't work. So as we go through this process of me sharing ideas, I think some people in the back of their mind think, oh, there's an idea. That's it. That's going to work. And then they don't see the progress they assume they should be seeing. And therein lies an issue. So we will solve this problem. That is a guarantee. The problem will be solved. How it's going to get solved and the exact date and time it gets solved is not something no one knows. We can make assumptions, but it is high priority for us because XCM is, our most important product. And for it to be an important product, it needs to be liquid. And that is something that we are focused on. Absolutely. Now, understand that this business, and when I say this business, I don't just mean like crypto exchange. I mean a fintech in general, is a complexity of complications. There's always something that needs to be attended to. There's always going to be a fire as we grow, get more and more people. There are very complex problems that on the face of the issue don't seem complex. But there are things that happen on a daily basis. So, that's just the way it is. But again, we do prioritize things, and this is prioritized internally, big time. Your opinion on investing in a DEX. Investing in a DEX. How exactly are you investing in a DEX? Are you thinking of creating one, or are you buying a token connected to a DEX? Because most tokens connected to DEXs aren't in fact tied, to anything except governance, which isn't really an investment in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, if you're talking about creating a DEX, look, in an environment like fintech, people like to jump on the most nuanced thing, the newest thing, right? Most investors are like dogs with a bone, right? So the dog sees the bone, wants the bone, gets the bone. Butterfly flies by, forgets about the bone, chases the butterfly. Squirrel comes by, forgets about the butterfly, chases the squirrel, etc. And that's how most investors work. Even seasoned ones, but definitely new investors. And DEXs were new and cool in 2016, and they didn't work then because, well, they were too nuanced. The market wasn't ready for them. Then they had a resurgence. Uniswap was around for years before it actually started to catch on. Now, and I said this then, and I'll say it now. The future of this market is not DEXs, and it's not centralized exchanges either. It's a hybrid. And how long it takes us to get to that future is a question. Again, it's a question no one can answer. We can speculate. But if you look at the world we live in, if you understand anything about legislation, regulation, anything about law enforcement, et cetera, and how that ties into financial transactions, you probably clearly see that DEXs are going to have an issue. Now, that doesn't mean they have an issue today. That doesn't mean they have an issue tomorrow. And some people ask, well, how are they going to come after a DEX? Everything's anonymous. Well, trust me, there's always ways to come after a business, right? I'll give you a clear example that's actually a real life example. It has nothing to do with DEXs, but in many countries, not all countries, but in Mexico, for example, telecommunication companies are tightly controlled by the government, and many other countries as well. If they don't want someone to access a website, they just force the telecom companies to cut off the IP. And this way, any person looking for that IP that has to cross into a Mexican ISP, internet service provider, can't get to it, which means no one can get to it. That's it. Game over. So, bye-bye DEX. And so that's not just one country. That's a lot of countries. And outside of that, countries that don't do that, something maybe like the US, UK, Western Europe, et cetera, Eastern Europe, Europe in general, have a million other ways they can stop business to flow into those type of, if they're like, well, we're trying to protect, from, whatever, drug runners from, or whatever, human trafficking, whatever the reason may be. All they need to do is stop all the regulated entities from dealing with any funds that touch a DEX. Everybody's heard of the travel rule, right? Everybody's heard of it. Everybody's complained about it. Everybody's talked about how it probably doesn't work. Well, except the regulator and the legislators who believe that somehow it's going to do something. It won't. But what they could do with something like the travel rule is just force all regulated entities, first, apply regulation that would mean anything not truly decentralized needs to get regulated, and then stop all regulated entities from dealing with funds that come from decentralized entities. Once again, bye-bye DEX. And so me, like if I'm approached and says, if someone approaches me and says, would you like to invest in our DEX? I'm saying no. Would you like to invest in a hybrid platform that takes the best of decentralized exchange, i.e. anonymous settlement, real time, and takes the best of a centralized exchange, i.e. centralized order books, high liquidity, high throughput? Then I'm like, well, send me a deck, because that sounds interesting. In all seriousness, what is your contingency plan if you were to die suddenly? How will CM succeed without you? Well, hopefully I don't die suddenly. Hopefully. I don't plan to. I guess nobody plans to die suddenly. Well, some people might. I don't know. I guess that's what you call suicide, right? Planned sudden death. I don't know. That's pretty morbid, but on that note, take a sip of my cold tea. So right now, we don't have any system that only I can access, to be honest. We don't really have anything that there's still a few operational things where I do get involved for whatever reason. But generally speaking, the business can run without me. Now, I am a big piece of the business in a sense of obviously high-level strategy and things like that, and just, I guess, vision, right? There are stereotypical CEO types, right? Some CEOs much more focus on, let's say, on-the-ground leadership, or they focus on sales, or they focus on finance. I mean, it all depends on background and what someone's good at. For me, I'm very high level, very vision, very strategic, very I kind of hover. I'm not the guy on the ground on most things. Doesn't mean I can't be on the ground. Obviously, in the beginning of the business, I was on the ground all over the place because I had to be. but those aren't where most of my talents lie. And so as the business grows, I'm able to use a bit more of the talent I have rather than having to do things that aren't necessarily what I like or what I'm really good at. So right now, if I were to die, I mean, we'd lose a spokesperson, but I'm pretty sure we'd figure that out. But the business would operate as per usual. It's not. I'm not that Canadian dude who has. I'm not going to die in India of dysentery and have like the private key tattooed to the inside of my butt cheek or something. That's we don't have that protocol, fortunately. So yeah, other than I think the relatively probably short-lived impact of the forehead's dead. I don't think there would be a major blip on the screen, to be honest. It might take a bit of time to get that narrative back and focused, and kind of we might lose a bit of our uniqueness for a little amount of time while the business restructures and figures out who's going to be the new, smaller forehead. But we'd figure it out. Good afternoon. Yes, I made it live. Hey, Jack, nice to see you. When the price of flux back to profitable levels, why the Mars not counting it? Well, I'm glad that you know what the profitable level is for us for that staking program. That's amazing. I don't know how you did the math without having any of the data, but if you were able to do that math without any data, I think I might have a job for you. I don't think Flux is close to where it becomes profitable for us again, to be honest. Hot math off the top of my head, like literally on the back of a napkin, we're probably 50% of the way there. Understand that the rate on Flux is already low in comparison to other staking options. We take a relatively small portion, and the cost to run Flux doubled. So not only did price fall by several multipliers from say Q4, you had a doubling of cost, and you've also had obviously no increase in APR. So I think off the top of my head, I would say 250 USD euro, since they're pretty much the same right now, is more or less where we would have some wiggle room. Having said that, like I said, we're working on 5 different staking programs that will, I think, revitalize Mars better than it's ever been. And we're also constantly trying to look at current staking programs to see how we can potentially, again, make those more attractive to the Mars product. Understand, like I said before, you're always going to piss somebody off. For example, you have maybe Flux stake, but you don't own XCM, or you own XCM, but you have more Flux stake than XCM, or your APR on Flux in terms of real dollar value, euro value is more than you get on XCM. Let's give that as an example. And let's say you're a Flux whale, and basically you came to CoinMetro because of our relationship with the issuer. And so you're here, and then we say, you know what, we're going to cut the APR a bit more because we want to help out our Mars stakers. Well, that's not going to make you happy, right? It might make Mars stakers happy, but in the grand scheme of things, no matter how, even if we took the entirety of the income, I could run the math real quick. I mean, I could go look at the page, but I don't feel like clicking out of looking at myself talking. But I think we have, I think it's 8 million Flux staked, if I remember correctly, something around there. So with 8 million Flux staked, assume even if we took the entire 10% APY, that's 800K. Take 800K and divide it evenly between all XCM stakers, which is 60 million worth of euro value. I guess you're probably getting a little bit of inkling onto what the impact would be. The impact would be relatively small for all those people, but it would be major for the people staking Flux because they would lose their APR, right? So those decisions, while they may seem, when you're focused on one thing, like I want more rebates on Mars, it's pretty easy to think that that's an easy decision. Like, why wouldn't we be doing that? But when you have to focus on, all of this, not just this in the middle, you're quick to realize that even if we were to give everything away, of course we piss off all the Flux stakers, but let's assume that they were somehow still happy. The impact would be small. The bigger impact we can have is by finding new staking programs, adding those in, finding things that are especially now, look, right now, adding staking programs to Mars, we're probably in the best spot that we have been in for years. Why? Well, we're in the middle of a bear market. We're in the middle of prices that have obviously come off of highs. The major thing about Mars is not about how much, asset you may get on a monthly basis, or what APR that means in terms of how much XCM you have staked. The real benefit is that over time, as these assets raise up in values, they rise up in value. You could end up seeing a real APR in real terms of hundreds and hundreds and thousands of percent. And getting those assets now during this, low in the market is substantially better than getting them at a high for that same reason. So I hope that shed some light on that question, hopefully. Don't want to take away Jet Fuel's question, but any biz dev news? Yeah, actually, there's some active biz dev going on. I talked about it, I think, last week. We have a something to do with Bitcoin and Lightning in terms of merchants. That's active right now, so we're building that out. Also have some internal work going on with just a general kind of merchant offering, which is also going on. I've been talking to Clemson University, and that's maybe not so much biz dev, but it's exposure for us, and it's also something unique where we might be able to actually help build some curriculum around crypto. So I've been having calls with Clemson, and I'm gonna fly out there probably in October for a day and go meet. They have a few crypto clubs on campus, so it's gonna be cool to sit down and meet with those guys and find out, what they want, what they're looking for, how we can help them achieve something at the university. So that'd be quite cool. Also, there may be some, and that means exposure. That means to a certain extent some type of marketing, but it means the type of marketing that really interests me. I don't want to put a banner up in Clemson University. I don't want necessarily to be on the back of the end zone when the Clemson team scores a touchdown or whatever. Not that doesn't have value, but I think for us and the type of company that we're building, the real value is being able to touch those students directly, meaning being in the campus, being there and helping them kind of navigate their way, not just through crypto, but through finance in general, and understanding why blockchain, why crypto, and why these things are important. It's I think to me that's a lifelong connection that you have with an alumni, and that's super exciting to me, much more than a banner at a football game, to be honest, or American football for those that just got offended. There should be another name for American football. It's like a mouthful and it sounds fucking stupid. Maybe we got to come up with a new name, at least for people that don't live in the U.S. so that they because anyway. Moving on. Has the 60-cent floor been a bad decision in hindsight? It might have been healthier and more credible to let the market do its thing. Hey, Headrush. I've been asked this question many times, and I'm going to give you the same answer. I don't think it was a bad decision, and I'll explain why. So, if you're talking about, just the current book, yeah, the book potentially could have been better. I don't like to work in hindsight, and I don't like to work in speculation. Of course, sometimes you can't help that because, if it's an unknown, the only thing you can do is speculate. But, most of the time when I get feedback, it's all speculative, right? Because would have this been better? Maybe this better. So let's talk about it. Let's break it down. We set that floor like we've done many times before, with the assumption that the reaction of the floor would have been similar to previous floors, meaning the buy orders would come in, support the floor, move from wherever they were previously, and we would move on, and the floor probably would never be touched. And if it was, there'd always be some liquidity there to support price. And that was the case for the first, I don't remember how long exactly it was, but 10 days maybe. And the reason, because at one point there was 1.7 million sitting on the floor. And what happened was the rest of the market decided to, shit the bed. And, we had a major market collapse. Most assets lost between 30, if they were lucky, and 90%. And what that led to was people needing to recoup, right? If you just lost 60% of your investment, but you see XCM sitting at 60 cents, and not only that, or 62 cents, whatever. And not only that, but there was a bunch of liquidity in the book, and you had 50K worth of XCM, and you could recoup some of the value in euro, dollar, whatever that you lost on the rest of your portfolio. You were going to jump at that a chance, and many people did. It wasn't about them not believing in XCM or not thinking that it was worth the price that it was being charged. It was simply that their portfolios looked like shit, and they needed to recoup somewhere. Now, most people haven't sold and haven't tried to sell XCM, because most people that hold XCM are long-term holders, whether they're whales, minnows, dolphins, whatever. I think that's a super important point. And that also means that they have a long-term vision. Now, those people, the vast majority of XCM holders that still hold their XCM, the vast majority, had we not had the floor. Now, again, this is speculation on my part because obviously I don't know what would have happened. But looking at the rest of the market, understanding the liquidity we had versus the sell pressure that we currently see and have seen, roughly in reality, somewhere around 3 to 4 million euro worth of sell pressure, which ate up the 1.7. And now, it's a little bit less than that because I'm going maybe to 75, 80 cents, which I wouldn't necessarily consider sell pressure at the current price. But let's say it's even 3 million. 3 million previously without the floor when we were hovering around 40, 45 cents would have brought us to 12. That was our previous floor. Now, at 12, with additional sell pressure, by the way, there was only ever about between 400 and 800,000 leading up on the buy side, leading up to the change in the floor, where it doubled. Obviously, price almost doubled as well. So you can argue that the same amount of XCM was sitting on the floor, but the value is different. So that would have pushed it to 12 cents in the same situation. Now, what happens then? What happens then is, maybe there's an argument to be made that more people may have come in and bought at 12 cents. It's an argument that can be made, but one that can't be proven on either side. I can say I don't think that would have happened. You can say you think it would have happened. Neither of us can prove each other wrong, right? But what I know what would have happened is that these people that put their trust in XCM and bought it for a long-term hold, now on paper are showing 4 times less portfolio value. Now, a paper value isn't the most important thing in the world, but psychologically it means a lot. And it also gives us a base for when the next bull run comes in. I would much rather be sitting at a 60-cent base than a 12-cent base. Or had we removed all the floors entirely, I can guarantee you we'd be below 1 cent right now. And I can guarantee you that just looking at the numbers. 3 million worth of sell volume based on about 600,000, I think, right before we moved the floor, sitting in the book, down to 12 cents, and then nothing below that. Yeah. Now, maybe the book would be slightly more active now, but everybody's portfolio would be extremely far down, extremely less than it is currently. And the starting place from where we would start when the next wave of buys and buyers come in, especially because we've now officially started to actually gain new signups from marketing, we'd be in a completely different place. So I think it was a good choice. I still stand by the fact that this is a utility token. It's a product, and the company should be able to price the product as we see fit. I talked about before we did it that the biggest risk was time tied to the fact that the buy side could dry up. That was always the biggest risk. In fact, I even talked about that with our head of engineering before we moved forward with the process to change the floor. And of course, none of us suspected that the market would do what it did necessarily on the day that it did it, or the week that it did it, or the months that it's done it. But it happened, and we've now seen the worst possible scenario. Worst possible scenario being illiquidity. Illiquidity, though, in many ways is a technical challenge, and in other ways is just a business growth challenge. We are obviously focused on growing the business, and we have smart people that can solve tech issues. So for me, it is a temporary issue that I'd love to get through today or tomorrow. Realistically speaking, it's going to take more time. I think I initially talked about 90 days, which was kind of what I was focused on. Those 90 days end, I think, at the end of October. We still have a few initiatives that I think will make a big dent. Mars is definitely one of them. And we have options outside of that again, are going to piss some people off, for sure. But I do believe we'll solve the issue. So I'm confident we're going to solve the issue. I still think it was a good decision. I think it's important to be able to, recognize when you make a bad decision. I mean, that's important in any leadership role. I also, on the other side of the token, pun definitely intended, that it's also important not to second guess decisions. When you make a decision, that's the decision you made. You can go back and analyze a decision to try and make better decisions in the future. And that you should always do, no matter how good that decision looks. Like right now, if the book was healthy but only had 2 million, what if we didn't put the floor? Would it have 10 million in it? There's always something you can go back and kind of check and judge and kind of put yourself to the judge and jury and see if, maybe you made a wrong decision. I still think the decision was the right one. I think it might have been timing, like most things in life, could have been better. Maybe there could have been some tweaks to the strategy on the lead up to doing it, but I still think the decision was the right one, especially considering the current state of the market. Absolutely, Jack. Same here. That's got to be the focus. Hey, Kevin, thoughts on the auto conversion of Binance stables to BUSD? Seems sketchy from a regulatory standpoint. Now that US wants to ban mining, should we ban supercomputers and servers too? Yeah, the US isn't going to ban mining. It just won't. I mean, first of all, that would probably end up at a state level. If there truly was some federal push to ban mining, which I don't think there will be, but if there was, it would go to the state level. And what state in the US has the most miners? It's Texas. And maybe you don't know a lot about US politics, but we have a Democratic government right now at the federal level in the US that, well, Texas doesn't like. And I can guarantee you, Texas wouldn't ban mining if it came down to some type of federal push. So that's not going to happen. Again, it's an election year, and when I sit down and think about would I like to be a politician, like if I looking from a real high level, I think being a politician might actually be a very interesting job. But knowing what you need to do to be a politician, which is basically lie all the time, and try to navigate, and again, piss some people off all the time, but then basically kind of be a clown every 2 or 4 years, because basically what you need to do at that point is just put on a show and talk about all the shit that you're probably not going to do, but at least that you know that your base is going to like. And that's where we are right now. We've got a bunch of clowns coming out and talking about shit because they think their bases are going to react. Oh, green, global warming, the polar ice caps are going to melt. Miami's going to disappear under the surf. Malaga is no longer going to exist. So let's stop Bitcoin mining. Yeah, that's going to solve the problem. It's nonsense. So I wouldn't heed too much into it. It's an election year. And the US election year basically pushes global policy, not just US policy, unfortunately. Auto conversion of Binance to stables. Yeah, that's a weird one. I think there might be some legal issues there, in the sense that, yeah, they're all stable coins, but if I put my money into one because I trust the issuer and you just automatically put it into another one without my consent, well, that's an issue. But I don't want to delve too much into that because, to be honest, aside from just reading an article that you probably read, I haven't really delved too much into it. Aside from telling my marketing team, let's start pushing USDC deposits because obviously they're going to need a place to go. But yeah, I mean, from a business standpoint, I kind of get it, right? Let's get everybody into our stable coin. Like that makes sense, I guess. But ethically and just the way, like, I generally wouldn't want to do business with a business that would do something like that. Again, I don't know all sides, because I'm sure there's things that CoinMetro has done that somebody could say the same thing, especially if they don't know the full context of why, And I think that's why these type of things like AMAs are super important, because you can ask me the why. You still might not like it, but at least you're going to hear it. And yeah, banning supercomputers, et cetera. Well, I guarantee you, an election year, some way down in the future, that's going to be a topic for sure. Would you say that the market now is priced in pretty much all possible negative news, and there are more chances for positive surprises? No. Just like most people tend to avoid the inevitable when it's negative, that's what markets are doing right now as well, because markets are generally powered by people. Inflation is going to get worse, especially in Europe going into the winter with energy prices. It's going to get fucking ridiculous. There may be some helicopter money. I don't know. Europe's already trying to get people to not use electricity, which, yeah, good luck with that. And so the many things that have put pressure on the market are not going to get better anytime soon. You're going to see a lot of, rallies because most people just want markets to go up, so they buy. But, markets don't do what most people want them to do. In fact, usually markets do exactly the opposite of what most people think or want. Right now, I would say that, I'd be looking for short positions before longs. Obviously, people should still be hodlers and holders. That is the easiest way to make money in this market, and it's never going to change. So you should hold on to what you have and believe in. Just understand that if you're going to try and swing trade or day trade, you're probably going to get fucking wrecked. And right now, I would say it's much better to look at a short position than a long. I'm not saying short today, but I would be looking for short setups on bullshit rallies. Because if you think 3 years of printing money is somehow remedied in 6 months, you're wrong. Absolutely, you're 100% wrong. If you think the bad management of COVID and the bad management of shutting down economies and all that stuff can be remedied in less time than it took to actually put in the bad management in the first place, you're wrong. Again, it's also it's going to be an election year in the US, and that's going to muddy the waters as well, because nobody's going to be focused on solving problems. They're going to be focused on telling you what the problems are so that they can win an election. So no, it's going to get worse before it gets better. 100%. I mean, there's no way inflation is totally priced in. Not even close. In fact, it's still going to inflate. So, unfortunately. I mean, it's funny only because you either can laugh or cry. And I choose to laugh rather than cry. So I'll laugh about it. But it's going to get tough. Hey, Kevin, do you also work on the weekends? Love to see him at the best in town. I have a hard time not being connected in some way, shape, or form to work. It's difficult for me, to be honest. Like I really, I probably have a problem. But I don't look at it as a problem. So that to me, it's not a problem, but it probably is. It probably is a problem. It'll probably shave a few years off my life. It's probably the reason why I'm bald. And also a reason why I can't, I need to get back into shape. It probably all ties in, I'm sure. But no, I generally, on weekends, I'm still, on the phone, I'm on Slack, I'm on Telegram. Because to me, if you ask me what my hobbies are, my first hobby is work, and the second one's probably work, and the third one's probably work. So I enjoy many things about what I do. Obviously, there's stressful days, weeks, months, and there's problems that, I don't like dealing with, but generally I like what I'm doing. Is that 5 new asset and staking or already implemented into Mars until end of October? That's both. That's 5 new staked assets as well as implementation into Mars. Hey, Kevin, are you guys working on being able to offer other state residents to enable, being able to, what? New York, okay. Not currently, simply because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's also a lot of moves. You can see all the talk on Twitter, et cetera, about CFTC and SEC. I'm going to say it here because I've tried to tweet it. Nobody wants to pay attention to me. So when it comes to assets that aren't securities, and I know Gensler from the SEC seems to believe there's a whole ton of securities in crypto. He also seems to think that if you take those assets and put them through the rules for securities, that somehow it's going to make a better market. But you'd be hard pressed to name me one officially classified security token that has volume and people actually use. I'll give you a few seconds. Go for it. Yeah, there isn't one. So, if the government's trying to create a stable market, pushing everything through security laws is not going to do it. So, but you can see there's a lot of chatter. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, the guys that regulate business in general, should be the ones that regulate non-securities. Why? Because you're buying a product. You're not, if you buy Bitcoin, you're literally buying access to the Bitcoin network. If you buy Ethereum, you're buying access to the Ethereum network. That is a product. That's a service, right? Why are we regulating that by the CFTC or the SEC for that matter? It doesn't make any sense. And hopefully that's where they go. And I've talked to a few people that are intricate in the conversations in the Congress and the Senate in the US, and they say that is one of the ultimate goals. Obviously, it's going to take a few years to get there, but I hope they're being heard, because SEC Gensler is wrong on so many things. And fortunately, there's people that stand up and say he's wrong. But the CFTC, these things aren't futures. They're not commodities. Tell me how Bitcoin is a commodity. I'll wait. Explain to me how it's a commodity. I'd love to hear the argument. And in fact, I've heard the argument many times. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a commodity. It never will be. And it should be treated as one either. You can call it gold or whatever, digital gold, but just calling it something doesn't make it commodity. I can call myself, Sandra. That doesn't make me, immediately. I shouldn't even make that joke because maybe it does now. I don't know. It probably does now. I don't know. Maybe I should change my name on my license or something. Moving on. So right now, it's not the main focus, simply because we have lots of other things we need to focus on. But it is something we want to get over the line. But if federal regulation is going to come in and we do all the legwork to get 50 state licenses, Yeah. And the bit license is a big one, and it takes a lot of effort. We're talking about maybe $2 million worth of effort to get that thing over the line. And with our size right now and the potential impact that's going to have on the business, it doesn't make business sense, even though we want to do it. Is Queen Elizabeth's death good or bad for XCM? I think it's neutral, to be honest. You know, what I found weird about the Queen Elizabeth thing is that literally I saw a story yesterday, which was Thursday, by the way, for those counting, that said doctors were concerned about the Queen's health on Thursday, and she died on Thursday. What the fuck? Are they the worst doctors ever? Or is that just a case of not being transparent? Like, was she sick as shit for months and was she a clone? I always thought Queen Elizabeth might have been a clone at some point. You know, like she died like 30 years ago and they just found some old lady on the street, gave her a crown and said, fuck it. You know, I don't think Queen Elizabeth's death has any effect on the market. You know, for better or for worse, I think she was a major symbol. And some people could probably argue that she was a bad symbol and that she symbolized the way things used to be done. And in some ways, she was a great symbol because she was a woman. She was a powerful woman. She did a lot of things in her lifetime. She lived through a lot of shit. But in many ways, she was just a symbol. Simple as that. So it's I don't think she has an effect on markets, to be honest, in the long term. Markets can be shaky the next day, and probably mostly because it's a little bit of respect paid to her service, that markets would be a bit choppy. But in reality, hate to say it, but it's kind of like, your favorite actor dies. Probably not going to affect the market. Tell us more about the plans you have with Dubai in regards with CoinMeasure. So plans for Dubai is one, obviously licensing. I think it's going to be a great base, not only for MENA, so Middle East and North Africa, which is a growing market, but also maybe potentially in the future, a larger kind of headquarters for a bigger piece of the world. Dubai to me seems like it's becoming kind of the new age Switzerland. Switzerland now is not Switzerland what it used to be, right? Switzerland used to be a place that people could go. It was a neutral establishment. Lots of money flowed through Switzerland. Switzerland had a lot of power because it controlled a lot of assets. All right, there we go. I think my main internet connection died, but this one seems to be okay. Hopefully, maybe not. Let's see. We'll keep going. So, as I said, it's a base. I think it's a new age Switzerland. Switzerland is no longer Switzerland, to be honest. Dubai has a lot of what Switzerland used to have. They try and remain neutral, and in most cases, they are neutral. At the same time, they try to work with global agencies to make sure that they don't run awry, but they also try to remain neutral. And I think that's going to turn into a big hub, not only for business in general, but especially the business we're in, which is a dematerialized fintech, dematerialized business that can operate from anywhere. I think Dubai is going to be a big piece of that, UAE. So yeah, it's a bit of a bet on the future, and in some cases, the long-term future. It's also just being able to position ourselves so that we can service what is one of the biggest growing markets in the world, which is the MENA region. Will you release the 5 new staking Mars assets all at once or all at once? Think about once every 2 weeks or so once we get started. That's a week and a half, something like that. So they won't all come at once, but they will come steadily. Have you already talked to KDA devs? No, have not. Haven't had a discussion with KDA in quite some time. Love to talk to Stuart. I think me and Stuart are due a talk, but I haven't been able to reach out to him, and he hasn't reached out to me either. So I'm sure he's got a lot of fish to fry over there as well. So what will CM do to maintain the 5% APR for XCM? Is it still feasible for years to come and potentially even increase? Also, would be nice for a drip-like feature for the juicy compounding. For the compounding side, yep, we've discussed that. I think that's going to be in the roadmap at some point. It's not necessarily on our current 3-month roadmap, but it is something that has come up in the past. We do plan on, getting that APR nicer for XCM. It is something we want to do. It is still going to be mainly treasury based. Obviously, you can now use XCM on margin. We make money when you make margin trades. So there is a income now. It doesn't support staking in its entirety, but it's starting to. And over time, I do think it'll support it more and more. With more utility that comes to XCM, there will also be value that comes back to the business. And so, our goal is to always have that XCM staking program be a viable option for our clients, the best option for our clients. Whether that means in the future that it's less XCM and more of a lot of assets, imagine having 50 assets on Mars. Even if you're only getting 0.1% extra based on some baseline, if you have 50 of those, well, it's 5%, right? If it's 0.2%, you get the picture. If those assets increase in value, which you would expect, some of them will, and to quite a large extent, you can get the impact that can have. And so, we may get to a point where XCM is less, but overall you're making more APR. We may keep the 5%. It may be higher than 5%. The goal is to make it attractive. And there's many ways to do that. And, we are still in the phase where we're trying to figure out what the best ways to do that is. Mars, I think, is an exceptional product. Yes, it's had its, ups and downs because of, we can't control the market. We can't control outside influences, but we are steadfast on making sure that becomes one of the best known staking programs in crypto. And I think it can. You said that buying up the sell wall would encourage new sell orders. You could buy and place a sell order, thus helping those who are trying to sell without affecting the wall. Wait, let me read that again. You said that buying up the sell wall would encourage new sell orders. Okay, I got that part. You could buy and then place a sell order, thus helping those who are trying to sell without affecting the wall. So what you're saying is, you're basically saying the same thing I'm saying. I don't know how that's a solution. So what I was saying was, we've seen it happen already, right? So there was 1.7 million on the buy side. Somebody said, wow, that's awesome. Sold into it. Had that not been there, we probably wouldn't have seen the same result, because 1.7 million wouldn't have just went into the buy side because if they knew they couldn't sell. Now, what I'm saying is if someone comes in and says just buys €1 million worth of XCM today, people will see that and potentially go, oh, liquidity's back in the book. Somebody just bought $1 million. I'm going to sell now too. And thus the sell side just fills back up. What you're saying is we should buy and then immediately put it on the sell side, which is exactly what I'm saying is potentially going to happen, but with client funds, which doesn't actually solve the problem. Yes, it allows some people out. And, we want to be in a place where we can help everybody, right? And doing that sounds easy, right? Helping the whale and helping the minnow at the same time. But those two people want very different things usually. And what we want to do is equalize. We want to offer something that is good for both, maybe not exactly what they want. And I would love to be able to push funds into, and get this XCM wall abolished. But I want to do it for the long term, because I think in the end of the day, us focusing our energy on getting that solved long term is so much better than helping in the short term. And I know that is painful for some, but I think overall the goal has to be long-term benefit to everyone. And what you're speaking about helps. First of all, we don't have a massive amount of treasury that we can just throw into XCM. If we did, maybe it'd be a different story. But if we did that now, that means maybe less marketing. Maybe that means less runway, obviously. And is that a risk that we want to take? Because how do we solve long-term problems if we're not here for the long term? Also, any opinion on what's happening with lunacy? Well, I think I predicted this. We can go back up maybe 5, 6 AMAs, 10 maybe. And I said there is a probability that lunacy becomes like a Dogecoin, where people are buying it just because it's cheap. And it eventually goes up, not because there's really any value in it, not because it's deflationary by any means, simply because it's cheap and people go and tell their friends, oh, I bought this thing. It's like you can buy 1 million of them for $1. And if it goes to 1 cent, man, we're all billionaires. Of course, nobody does the math that if the fucker went to 1 cent, it'd be like the highest market cap in crypto. If it went to $1, it'd be worth more than all the money in the world, right? So obviously that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's impossible to happen. It's not going to happen, period. I'm saying it here first. It's not going to happen. And, you know, there was also some news about burning lunacy down to 10 billion tokens. I don't know how they burn tokens they don't own. I don't know if that's some type of like split, right? So you'll just get 1/10 of the tokens, but they'll be worth 10 times more. I didn't really read into it too much, to be honest, because so it's just common, you know, your common market effect. People see something cheap, they assume it's better to buy something cheap than to buy something expensive because they think somehow they're going to make more money. And well, 99.9999999 to the infinity, they're wrong. Any news on credo staking? No news yet. Haven't gotten to that point yet. Definitely, like I've said in the past, it's something I want to do. We will get there, but it's not a business priority currently. How is CM's marketing campaign progressing so far? Oh, we're already at an hour. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut. This is the last question, guys. You mentioned that you found a new baseline for user growth. Is that new user count exceeding that baseline by now due to the marketing efforts? So we were around roughly 100 signups a day for some time, right? Now we're roughly skirting around 200. So that new baseline now, it never looks like this, you know. I mean, this is just not how a chart looks. You guys know what charts look like. You probably look at them more than I do. Charts look like this, you know. So, but if you talk about a mean and you zoom out, yes, we're starting to kind of hit baselines and adjust and then have new goals based on those baselines. So yes, we have had a few campaigns paused because of some tracking inabilities, which we're now solving. We have new campaigns coming out. I know I'm filming some stuff next week for more campaigns. So there's a lot of progress moving on. There's a lot of good stuff happening. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. I hate saying that, but it's the truth. And I know we've been waiting a long time for marketing, but in the last 2 months, we've seen a lot of progress that we never saw before. So that should make everybody happy. And yes, we can do more, and yes, we will do more. And we have more people joining the team early next month, which I think is also going to propel us, help fill some holes, and get us to be able to utilize the agencies we're working with, but also our internal talents to be able to push marketing even harder. So yes, there is progress, absolutely. How will the Ergo parallel assets be distributed to Flux stakers? Well, we always do the same thing. We sell parallel assets and then we distribute Flux. So that's how it'll be done. CM build in-house DEX in the future? I don't think so. I think hybrid, for me, the future is hybrid. I think building a DEX is probably a mistake because I don't think DEXs are going to be a major piece of the new financial industry, but I think hybrids will. So that's a piece of a DEX combined with pieces of a centralized exchange. Hi, Kevin. Will higher interest be available for non-ICO XCM staking? That's the plan. Yes, we want to raise that across the board, not just for ICO contributors. So I'm going to end it there. I know there's still some great questions hanging in there, but I got to go. Thank you guys for the great questions. Please ping me on Telegram if I didn't get to your question. I will get to it there probably later this evening. Have a great weekend. Don't worry about pricing on charts. Obviously buy XCM because you all know that's an obligation. It's written into our terms of service. You must buy XCM. It's in there somewhere. I said it was somewhere else last week and I got a bit of flack for it, so I won't repeat that one. But you ever see that movie 23? It's a Jim Carrey movie. He starts seeing the number 23 everywhere. Well, start looking for buy XCM everywhere. You're going to find it. I guarantee you. You'll find it on like a bus, on a license plate, whatever. Marketing, man. Marketing. Viral. So anyway, have a great weekend. Know that we're behind the scenes here doing a lot of stuff, working on a lot of things. And I know we're very transparent, but sometimes all that news isn't going to reach you. Just know that we are steadfast on making sure that not only is XCM the best token, best exchange token in the industry, but we're also steadfast to make sure that people know about it. So marketing and XCM and all those things, they're all in the works. Things are happening, lots of great things. And I appreciate everybody's support, as I always do. And you can always tag me on Telegram at Kevin Murcko. You can always tweet me at Kevin Murcko. I love to get your comments, love to get your thoughts, love to get your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Have a good weekend, everybody. See you here next week. Cheers.